The wolf sheds his coat once a year, his disposition never. Those words, published by Benjamin Franklin nearly 3 centuries ago, remind us of an essential and forgotten truth. Appearances may change, but true nature never, ever does. So I think today, like every day, is a perfect time to revisit the timeless wisdom of Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanack, which was first published on December 28th, 1732. He was just 27 years of age, and it became a cultural phenomenon over the next 25 years. He blended sharp wit, practical advice, and even lessons on power, government, and liberty that most people ignore today, to our detriment, of course. So on this episode, we're going to explore some of Benjamin Franklin's best wisdom, and I think you'll agree, today, it's just as critical as it was back then. But first of all, welcome and thank you for joining me here on the Path to Liberty. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the show for Monday, December 30th, 2024. And let's kick it off here with a new article by Mike Meharry. He said on December 28th, 1732, at just 27 years of age, man, if I was on it at 27, I like to think back at this. He was a pretty incredible dude. Incredible young man. Benjamin Franklin published the first edition of Poor Richard's Almanack. It gave him all kinds of wealth and fame in the years to follow, and it played a big part in elevating him to the status of what he's known as around the world by many people, the first American. The Almanack, Mike points out, was published under a pseudonym, Richard Saunders, and was a source of many pithy insights on timeless subjects related to human nature, many of which can be applied to government and the principles of liberty today. Now, Benjamin Franklin, he saw this as kind of a tool, a vehicle for education, and maybe that developed over the years. How can you be certain how much the thing's going to sell? And it did sell out pretty quickly. I'll get to that in just a moment. But he did see this as kind of a combination of things that were entertaining, instructional, but a way to impart wisdom on the general public. And he discussed this in his autobiography years later. He said, "I endeavored to make it both entertaining and useful. And observing that it was generally read, scarce any neighborhood in the province being without it, I considered it as a proper vehicle for conveying instruction among the common people who bought scarcely any other books." This was a man who understood how to talk to the common man. And that's kind of the persona that his pseudonym, Richard Saunders, used. So it was really easy to understand, really easy for people to think about and grasp. And they loved it. They bought it in huge numbers, at least at the time. It was first mentioned in the Pennsylvania Gazette, which was also Franklin's publication, on December 19th, 1732, as just published. I find many places say, today in history, December 29th, but it wasn't actually released at that point. And on December 28th, it was announced for sale, again in the Gazette with this, just published for 1733. Poor Richard, an almanac containing lunations, eclipses, planet motions and aspects, weather, sun and moons rising and setting, high water, etc. Besides many pleasant and witty verses, jests, and sayings. Now, there are a bunch of timeless quotes which Franklin called either sayings or proverbs over the years in just his first issue. And here's a handful that I love. Distrust and caution are the parents of security. If we want to be secure in our person, our property, our liberty, of course we have to distrust anyone who has the power to violate it. He said, innocence is its own defense. Man, that's so good. And of course, he that lies down with dogs shall rise up with fleas. So if you associate with the garbage, you're gonna have it all over you. And this one may be my favorite, at least from that first edition. And I think it applies to government more than ever today. Anoint a villain and he'll stab you. Stab him and he'll anoint you. Some of these are really, really just great. I really appreciate them. Now, he did kick it off in that first edition with a kind of an introduction explaining in this kind of kind of folksy way as Richard Saunders, which was the pseudonym, why he was publishing the thing. And of course, he says it's because he was poor and he needed to make some money, or his wife was going to be kind of upset. He basically started with this: "Courteous reader, I might in this place attempt to gain thy favor by declaring that I write almanacs with no other view than that of the public good. But in this I should not be sincere. And men are nowadays too wise to be deceived by pretenses, how specious whatsoever. I wish they were too wise not to be deceived today, but that's a different story." Franklin continued, "The plain truth of the matter is I am excessive poor, and my wife, good woman, as I tell her, excessive proud." And he goes on to tell the story that she basically was saying, stop wasting your time ruminating about philosophical things and bring home some bacon. You got to make some money. Otherwise, man, you're going to run into some problems. So this put his pithiness on full display right in the first sentences. And so he did actually sell out pretty quickly. I think the first run of it sold out in 2 days. And then he did 3 more runs of it in that first year, and they all sold out within days as well. And he recalled this in his autobiography as well. He said, "It accordingly came to be in such demand that I reaped considerable profit from it, vending annually near 10,000 copies. Now, 10,000 copies at the time, especially in the 1730s and 40s, this was a huge number, and he made a lot of money out of this as well. Now, there are a lot of common sayings. If you've never heard of Poor Richard's Almanac, there are many sayings that we think are just part of American culture today, which were either created by Franklin or popularized by him in the almanac. Things like haste makes waste, or early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. There's a bunch of them like that. Maybe penny saved, penny earned as well. But over the years, he also hit on a number of themes that focused heavily on self-reliance and frugality. Franklin was a big believer that the more frugal you are, the more self-reliant you are, the more that you can live freely and happily in your life. You're never tied down to requiring other people to protect and save you at all times. But he also focused heavily on distrust of those in power, people with power, and warnings about corruption and folly. Now, here's just a handful of some of my favorite quotes along those lines, like this one: "The greatest monarch on the proudest throne is obliged to sit upon his own arse." Or, "He that cannot obey cannot command." The way I read that is those who are basically given the duty of following an oath to the Constitution, if they can't stay in line with it, they have no right to be in a position of power whatsoever. That's my take on it. Whether Franklin would agree, I'm hoping he would. But he put it like this: "You may give a man an office, but you cannot give him discretion." And one more here, the one that I started out with, which I think is absolutely timeless, a maxim about human nature. And it's a reminder that we can't trust anyone with power to endanger our liberty, because they're all wolves when they're at the top of the largest government, largest empire in history, especially. He said the wolf sheds his coat once a year, his disposition never. Now, if you're familiar with Poor Richard's, you may have already read that many of these quotes were not original to Benjamin Franklin. And he, over the years in various editions of his almanac, made it very clear, like, oh yeah, I've kind of basically jacked these from other people, but he gave it his own twist, his own context. And he took some things that may have been heard in the past and made them very popular. Meharry puts it like this in his article: "Very few of the sayings in Poor Richard's Almanac were original to Benjamin Franklin. Instead, he was a master of compiling and revising things that he found in other English anthologies, and I'm certain that he found some in French as well, maybe. But as Charles Meister, Mike writes, described it in his paper, Franklin as a proverb stylist, he delighted his readers because of the way he carefully selected and skillfully revised the wise sayings and epigrams, eliminating superfluous words, smoothing and balancing awkward phrases, replacing vague and meaningless generalities with his own specific, sharp, and homey terms. Probably something I definitely really need to learn to do better myself. And maybe we all can do this. The better that we can communicate the principles that we believe in, the better that we can communicate in ways that people can appreciate or are interested in, the more we're going to reach and teach more and more people about what we love. And for me, that's advancing liberty. Meharry points out, now, one of the ways that Franklin was really good at taking things that were already popular or kind of known was literally just in the name of his publication, Poor Richard's Almanack. And Mike says calling his publication Poor Richard's Almanack was a brilliant marketing strategy. I've seen over the years many people in kind of the content marketing sphere in modern times say, look, if you really want to be successful, you really should understand what Benjamin Franklin was doing as a young man and throughout his life in Poor Richard's. Incredibly powerful stuff about finding ways to reach people and make things that you want them to hear very popular. And then on top of it, Mike writes, the name was a nod to Poor Robin's Almanac, a popular British publication that had been in the print since around 1630 or so. I've seen it listed later as well. Here from the Benjamin Franklin Historical Society, they point out that Franklin also wrote under the pseudonym Richard Saunders. So first of all, he took a version of Poor Robin's Almanac that was very popular. Oh, he changed a little name in it and okay, what's this all about? And if you think about the marketing aspect, he's actually making a lot of sense as far as strategically. And then he also took this name Richard Saunders. Now, Richard Saunders was a very famous guy. He was a physician and astrologist who also wrote under a pen name Cardanus Rider, which if you flip the letters around, I'm not sure if it's a perfect anagram or whatever that is called, it actually comes out as almost Richard Saunders. And he had published something that was very popular for, I think it was maybe up to 2 centuries. It wasn't him that alive that whole time, called Rider's British Merlin. So in other words, Franklin looked out there and he saw things that were working and he did his own take on them. Now I want to look at a few other of the quotes that I think are really interesting, maybe thought-provoking for you in ways that, well, hopefully they are like for me as well. He that lives upon hope dies fasting. And I think for today, for us, those of us who want to sit around and kind of wait for things to change, hoping that we'll find someone to come in on a white horse and fix things. Well, man, we're going to be really sorry if we do that. You have to take action if you want to see the change that you want in your life. Or this is kind of an earlier take. I think this one was published in 1738. It's an earlier take on the more famous Benjamin Franklin phrase, he who gives up a little essential liberty for some temporary safety deserves neither liberty nor safety. This is the 1738 edition of that. Sell not virtue to purchase wealth, nor liberty to purchase power. And this one is, to me, just constantly good. It gives me a little chuckle here and there as well. Ignorance leads men into a party, and shame keeps them from getting out again. Even when Benjamin Franklin was discussing on the last day of the Philadelphia Convention in 1787 as an old man, very famous, very highly respected, September 17th, 1787, we call it Constitution Day, he was saying, look, and he had argued against various provisions in the Constitution. For example, he didn't like the executive branch. He said, like, look, you guys all know that there's stuff that I don't like in here. But I can't say that I won't like it forever, because if I'm wise, in essence, and this is me paraphrasing it, I'm going to be able to change my mind. So this is a very consistent message from Benjamin Franklin that if you get into something and you just stay there just to stay there, you aren't really leading with your brain, with your thoughts. You're living on something else. And maybe that's the ignorance that brought you there in the first place. So ignorance leads men into a party, and shame keeps them from getting out again. Benjamin Franklin never pulled any punches. Here from a paper by Lisa Morgan. I think this is a part of the Penn State University library system. The Prominent and Prodigiously Popular Poor Richard. Awesome title. She pointed out that doctors and lawyers were some of his favorite targets as well. He was obviously distrustful of doctors and their healing abilities, using phrases like, there's more old drunkards than old doctors. And this one's pretty good. God heals, and the doctor takes the fee. Lisa points out that lawyers earn the moniker of scoundrel in Franklin's more famous maxims, like a countryman between two lawyers is like a fish between two cats. Or God works wonders now and then. Behold, a lawyer, an honest man. I mean, if you think about lawyers who tell us what the meaning of the Constitution is, now, mind you, there are outliers who are pretty awesome, but a vast majority of them have basically been taught that the Constitution means what the Supreme Court says it means until it changes its mind. And the Supreme Court, what it says it means, starts with Justice John Marshall in 1803. The ratification debates mean nothing. What the framers had to say means nothing. The Federalists, Anti-Federalists mean nothing. It's only what the courts say, what the legal system says. And the system is, in essence, that version of the system is really no different than the unwritten British Constitution that the founders and old revolutionaries fought a long bloody war to get away from. One that was based on precedent and precedent alone, not principles, but precedent. Anyways, Elisa continues, though facetious in nature, the underlying tone of these quips served as a warning to his readers to watch out for these unscrupulous rogues. That's pretty good. She's a good writer as well. And she points out, and Elisa also points out, that this made Benjamin Franklin pretty rich and famous. She said, Poor Richard's Almanack became Benjamin Franklin's second most profitable work, the Pennsylvania Gazette being number one. Nor was the popularity of Franklin's Almanac confined to Philadelphia. Once it started selling out quickly, he realized, man, I got something on my hands here. And he started marketing it all over the place. By the 1740s, he had marketed it to other colonies from Boston to Charleston, selling 10,000 copies annually and providing Franklin with roughly 1/3 of his income. In fact, she writes, Franklin's printing business was so profitable as to afford him the luxury of retiring from the daily operations at age 42. Man, got nothing like that here at the 10th Amendment Center. I'm at least a decade beyond that, but still working. I don't know if I'd ever want to retire from the daily operations because I certainly love what I do. Now, interestingly enough, the Almanac made it, he was popular all around the world. Certainly, he became known as the first American. It was translated, I think Napoleon may have had his hand in it. It was translated into Italian and then French. We also had Louis XVI, maybe prior to that, who gave a ship to John Paul Jones. And when I was a kid, John Paul Jones may have been my hero. It was possibly, there's very few like really deep books that I remember reading as a child. Unfortunately, my reading and learning really didn't come till much later. But I really loved learning about John Paul Jones, one of the few that I really recall from very young age. But John Paul Jones was gifted a ship by Louis XVI, and then John Paul Jones renamed the ship after Poor Richard. It was called Bonhomme Richard, basically like Good Man Richard. And here from the Navy, they point out that Captain John Paul Jones chose the pen name of Benjamin Franklin, the ambassador to France and author of Poor Richard's Almanac. This early 18th century journal urged men to seek out roles in the public sphere and shape their own destinies. It's about the rugged American individualism that we all hear about, the vaunted American kind of culture. Clearly, his journal helped forge the will that resulted in the American Revolution. And to close it out here, I want to share with you two of the most impactful quotes or sayings or proverbs over the years from Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. I read through all of these in the last couple of weeks, and it was really kind of fun. It was a nice break from some of the deeper reading that I do, but it also, some of these really make you pause and think, like this one. Who is wise? He that learns from everyone. Who is powerful? He that governs his passions. Who is rich? He that is content. And who is that? Nobody. And this one last one, I think really should be my New Year's resolution every single year. And maybe if I get to that day, when people stop going to the gym and things like that, and I forget about it, maybe this will be a good reminder near the end of the year, every single year. It would certainly be something that, man, it fits my mold, and it really, well, hopefully you'll feel it the way I do. Be at war with your vices, at peace with your neighbors, and let every year find you a better man. So that's definitely my New Year's resolution for 2025. And I'm going to put it out there that it really should be my New Year's resolution every single year for the rest of my life. And whether this is your first episode or you've been here for every single one since day one, watching or listening to The Path to Liberty, I can't thank you enough for spending some of your time with me today. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to help us reach and teach more and more people with essential foundational principles, with forgotten history like this, plus learning and teaching and reaching more and more people about the original legal meaning of the Constitution, about the principles of liberty and how to defend both when government refuses to do so, follow the rules, which is, well, 24/7, 365. There is absolutely nothing that helps us do this work more than the financial faith and support of our members. If you got a couple of bucks of that dirty government fiat, please consider throwing it our way over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. It's all spelled out, 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Our membership program starts out at just $2 a month. We also have annual, 5-year, and lifetime options. I'd be extremely grateful to any consideration you can give to joining us as a member today so we can kick off a strong 2025 in support of the Constitution and liberty. You can also make a one-time gift over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate. Again, I'd be very grateful for any consideration you can give to supporting us financially today. And if you can't do that or you're just not ready, you're like, oh, I don't know, that dude's not that cool, I don't want to help him out. There's at least with some loot, there are other ways, free and easy peasy ways that you can help us spread the word, especially on the mainstream platforms, taking actions like hitting the like button, leaving comments or reviews on podcast platforms, subscribing, getting notifications. All those things can help trigger the algorithm of the platform that you watch or listen on, especially the video platforms. The more watch time you have, the more likely they will show the video to more and more people. So all that stuff, I'm very grateful for your help. There's no way I could get this out to as many people as we've been getting it out to or growing further without your support. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it made you think. Let's do that quote one more time at the end for our New Year's resolution. Be at war with your vices, at peace with your neighbors, and let every new year find you a better man. Thanks again for being here with me. I hope you had an awesome Christmas. Wishing you a very happy New Year. I'll be off on Wednesday, but I'll be back to my regular schedule coming in a few days on Friday. And I look forward to seeing you next time here on the Path to Liberty.